Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. We're back with fan favorite, investor, entrepreneur, recruiter extraordinaire.
Who's that?
That's
Oh,
Alex
me.
Elliot. How are you?
I'm very good, Doctor. How are you?
Yeah, I am not bad. This is our last full day in California. So flying back tomorrow night and get a few hours working today. Try to motivate my team. I think I actually did the opposite. I haven't been my usual punchy self in the last week. I'm looking to get forward to getting back to the UK on a normal time zone to strangle a bit of work out of people.
Is it the plan? Have
yeah,
you lost?
exactly.
I think you look very, very smart, sir. But I'm just wondering whether you've lost your Irish superpower, not being pasty.
Well, I'll be back. I hear we're in for snow at Easter, so yeah, I'm sure I'll be back being pasty and miserable pretty soon.
Join the club.
How many kids have you got in the house?
Just one.
One. Okay.
That's quite enough for me. 3.5.
I've got a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and right now there's a lovely nanny downstairs who's been face painting with them, and we're in a nice place, and the sun's shining. I've been taking them to the beach. We're going back to the UK to tag team in and out of work, trying to work out what that schedule is going to look like, and what that reality is back there.
Is it Rocky 3 where they say, "What's your prediction for the Fight Clubber?" and Clubber's response is pain.
Yeah,
I think maybe that's something to think about.
We're all in it, hey. Bet you're glad you sold that recruitment business when you did.
Well, it's certainly an interesting time to be looking to invest in the market. So I don't think anyone quite saw this coming, the speed and ferocity of the change in the market space. I think everyone knew it was going to have an impact, but I certainly haven't spoken to anyone who was quite aware of the severity of the impact and how quickly it was going to come in. So it's given everyone very, very little time to plan, which I think is part of the problem. But yes, certainly an interesting time to be looking to invest. And yes, 2016 was probably a good time to exit a business.
Yeah, I would. I fear for people with large Manhattan offices. You know, big offices in London, places where like rents are sky high.
Sure.
It's a worrying time. But let me delve into that a little bit. What was it like? What was it like to invest in recruitment businesses just before this? Like, what was your mindset? What were you thinking?
With regards to the profile of the people or the market space, yeah. So what we look for, Strive Sales is a company based in Manchester who work in software sales. So that's a good example. That's the one investment we do have in our portfolio at this moment in time. And those guys are probably a really good example of the type of the founders and also the business market we look at. So two individuals work together, both extremely strong in their own right, but really, really complementary skill sets. So shared values, shared vision, but complementary skill sets. When you get that right and both individuals are just as investable as each other, it makes a really, really compelling proposition with regards to what they're going to be like as a team. And John, my business partner, Jonathan Coxon, and myself have both had experience of that with regards to the value you get out of working alongside someone who A, is extremely strong, but B, actually enjoys and is good at the stuff maybe you're not quite as keen on. So I think ideally we look for partnerships because you get that value out of investing in two people rather than one. And then the markets we look at, we're reasonably agnostic, but we want high growth, high margin markets, ideally with international expansion opportunities. We're only looking to invest in probably 3, maybe 4 businesses a year. We've built a team. So it's not just John and myself. We've got an exceptional ops director, an exceptional FD. We've got a guy coming on board who actually sold our business for us. So he comes from a private equity background. So we've got a really strong team there, but effectively we're looking to invest in a small number of high growth opportunities where we see, you know, massive opportunity with the founders. And I guess their ambition's important as well. So we want to invest in founders who want to make a dent in the universe, you know, who want to become a dominant player in their space. We're not doing this just to give ourselves something to do. We're doing this because we believe in the people we invest in. We want to support them to build exceptional high growth market leading recruitment businesses. And I believe, as does John, that with our support and the right financial backing, investing in the right people, if we support them effectively, we can help them build wealth creation opportunities within 7 years. So I'm not saying everyone wants to exit their business. That's certainly not true. And I wouldn't recommend going into it with purely the focus, I want to exit. But I think a lot of people do. And regardless of what's going on at this particular moment in time, it doesn't really change our plan. We believe that supporting the right people with our background and our expertise, what we bring to the table, not just the money, but you know, the experience we've got of building a high growth, scalable business and exiting it from nothing. We believe that we can invest in the right people who can, you know, exit and create value within 7 years. What
age are the guys that you invested in?
29 and 30, I think. I don't actually even know off the top of my head. About 30. So
but they weren't around in the GFC.
No, they were starting off their careers, so they worked for us originally. So we know them well, and they've gone off and done their own thing. They've been very successful in their own right. These aren't junior guys. These guys who have had a really impressive backgrounds. One of them has built already a pretty successful recruitment company, and the other one's absolute beast of a salesman who can just go out and, you know, really just win business left, right and center. So they've got a really compelling value add they both bring to the table with regards to how their skill sets fit together.
What whenever this happened, what kind of conversations are you having with them? You're obviously the voice of reason when this happens, because nobody was expecting this. And when founders are looking at this, they're looking at the next 12 months, the next 8, like they're thinking we're going to take over the world in the next little while. What are you having what are you talking to them in terms of their cost base, in terms of their credit lines, in terms of their own staff, the messages they're getting from the market to give in? Like what walk me through what that looked like, that conversation?
Look, first and foremost, as a business, it's better that this happens now to us than 5 years down the line, right? So a lot of our competition in the space we're in are in a much worse position than we are. Yeah. And actually, look, the reality is we can turn this to our advantage, because this is a great opportunity to bring forward some of those key initiatives and some of those projects. To scale a business, you have to have certain stuff in place. You know, that's pretty obvious, right? You can't just keep adding people. So there's certain elements of infrastructure, there's operational efficiencies, there's strategy, there's planning, all of that stuff that goes into building a really fast growth scalable business. You can't do it all in one go at the beginning. You have to spread it out, and you have to do it in a linear way so that it's done in a logical order based upon the stage of growth and what you need to go through that stage of growth. This gives us an opportunity maybe to fast track some of that infrastructure, some of that process, some of that system. So looking at our operational efficiencies, understanding how we can bring forward some of those projects to make world-class operations in different parts of the business and actually get it in place now rather than having to wait 6, 12, 18 months. So we're turning it to our advantage. And look, bottom line is this is a long-term play. So anybody who thinks they're going to go in and build a world-class recruitment business within a couple of years, it's just not going to happen, right? It's a bit of it's trench warfare, and it takes a long time to get this stuff right. It does take a long time. We aim to do it in 7 years, but for most people, it's probably going to take at least double that. So I think we've got to focus on the long term. We've got to understand how what's going on at this moment in time fits with that in the short term. We've got to make sure those two things are tied up, and we've got to make the most of it. Lots of our competition actually are going to be taking some serious backward steps through this process, and I think we can actually turn that to advantage. We can turn that to advantage, and we can close the gap on some of the big players in the market space quicker.
Have I been watching too much Billions, or is it a good time for a hostile takeover for one of your competitors? Is there is there things for sale now when people need money out there? Like what type of, like I'm interested. What are the brokers telling you?
Okay, so look, bottom line, regardless of what the brokers are saying, that's not a market we're interested in.
Yeah.
As investors, any investment we make has to be win-win, and I think we work collaboratively. We're not passive investors. We don't just put money into an opportunity and then sit back and have a monthly board meeting. So we're heavily involved in building that business out and supporting the founders. We put the founders through a training and development program, taking them from billing manager to CEO. We work with them personally on that. We put together a growth strategy. We work with them operationally on a really hands-on basis where the business needs it. So first and foremost, we're business partners with these people. So I think you've got to remember when you're going into a negotiation that you're on opposite ends of the table, opposite sides of the table. But when you come to an agreement, all of a sudden you're on the same side of the table. So I think you have to go into it with the mindset that the deal's going to get done and you're going to be business partners afterwards. So I think that I'm sure there are some pretty, I'm sure there's some investors out there seeing this as an opportunity to go in and maybe get shareholdings and equity on a larger scale than they could have done previously because some people are desperate for cash. That's not our thing. We're not actively investing at this moment in time because risk and reward has to be, I think, is it asymmetrical? And the more risk you take, the more reward you have to take to counterbalance that. There's so much risk out there at this moment in time in a lot of markets because of the uncertainty with regards to the time frame and the ongoing impact of what's happening, that we would have to take an equity position in most businesses to justify the cash we were putting in for the time scale it could be going on for, that I don't think it would necessarily be in the interest of the current owners to do that. Because if it works out, we end up with a percentage of that business that maybe isn't in the business owner's interests. We want business partners. We don't want franchises. We don't want divisional managers. We want independent businesses. So I think you've just got to treat people now like you'd treat them normally, and you've got to treat people like you'd want to be treated. You've got to look after people, right? These are going to be the people that they're your business partners, and you've got to have their back.
No, it's all interesting to me, you know. Because I'm suspecting that there's lots of people reaching out to you at the moment looking for conversations. Are you getting more of a flow on that front?
I think the flow of conversations is probably quite similar to how it was. There's an awful lot of conversations, but there's also been a lot of people saying, "Can you look? We're looking for quick. Look, this is our situation. We're in a bind. Can you help us?" And yes, we can help you. We can have conversations with you, and look on a completely because it's the right thing to do. We can offer support and advice, and we can look at their plan, or we can help them build a plan. But we're probably not going to be in a position where we start putting money into businesses at this point, because look, again, going back to that previous point, this stuff's got to be win-win. And if it's not going to be win-win, it's not right. This has got to be a 10-year relationship. That's what you've got to plan for.
So is that I'm immersed in Fox News and CNN, and I can't make my mind up who's lying to me the most, but the one guy that I'm kind of listening to is Dr. Finacci, or the head of the epidemiology of the USA. He I don't even know if that's the right word, but he's estimated that there's minimum 100 and maximum 200,000 people are going to die here, and he's hoping to get everything up and running before May. So America, when I look at it, if he's saying that, there's a good chance that we could be back. Businesses will be open here. America's not built to be a welfare state, so it'll need to get going. It's a good chance that people will be back to work at some form by May. We might get back into business in the recruitment world June, July. Well, what's your thoughts in terms of the timelines and how things are going to pan out? I know you don't have a crystal ball. None of us do.
Sure. I hope you're right, Dualta. I do hope you're right. if you've read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, one of my favorite business books, and in that it talks about the Stockdale paradox. And the Stockdale paradox is based upon a guy who was put into a POW camp in the Vietnam War and went through, some horrific brutality. So first and foremost, that kind of puts things in perspective. But the paradox is that he talks about the fact that you've got to have an unwavering belief that you're going to get through it, but you've also got to be able to confront the brutal facts. So that's the paradox. And having an unwavering belief in something that you're going to get through it isn't the same as optimism. Optimism, I think it references in the book something along the lines of it's the optimists who always go first. And the horrific harshness of that is it's the optimists who think we'll be out within 2 months, and 2 months comes and goes, and that's enough to break them. So I hope you're right, but from a planning perspective, confronting those brutal facts, I have been advising businesses that you need to plan for 6 months of disruption. And look, that might be different in the US based upon that social economic element, and there is a difference there. But I personally would suggest that businesses need to be looking at a 6 month window. And if I'm wrong, and if it's shorter than that, happy days. And if I'm not wrong, they've planned accordingly.
There's a difference between disruption and desolation. When you say plan for 6 months, what does that mean? Does that?
I think look at your worst case scenario, and I think it's market dependent. But again, I don't want to come across as that negative guy. That's not me.
No, but I'm just curious. So.
But I do. I think as recruiters and as business people, we have a natural tendency to be optimistic, too optimistic at times. And that's certainly myself. I'm the most optimistic person in the world. However, I think also from a planning perspective, we just have to balance it out a little bit and say, if I'm wrong, what's the result of that? And therefore, I think some businesses are in a really good position at this moment in time and other businesses aren't. And again, I don't want to be too negative, but I think the key is to look at the worst case scenario and understand what that means to you as a business from a cash flow perspective.
Cash flow, cash is king at the moment. So when we come out of it, 6 months time, are you going to make up for lost time and make a few more punts, or are you going to come up for air and see what's happening?
Well, look, the 6 months, and again, the window I'm not suggesting there's going to be, only 10% of the potential opportunity out there for a full 6 month period. Hopefully we'll see the first quarter of this period it might be less than this. I don't know, but look, hopefully you're going to see an uptick in the amount of opportunity out there over this 6 month period. But personally, I've been suggesting people look at a 6 month window. So that's probably an important point to make. And then I think it's very market and business. It's market dependent, right? Who's going to come out of this quickest? So there's that whole thing of, is it going to be a V bounce? Is it going to be a U, a W, or an L, whatever it might be? No one knows. And I think anyone who suggests they do know is fibbing.
Yeah.
We hope it's a V. And I think in some markets, there's going to be pent up demand. Like I was talking about, businesses' long-term objectives don't change because of a short-term matter like this. So I think a lot of businesses are going to be able to hopefully really catapult they're going to aim to catapult themselves forward quickly when they come out of this. And I think others are going to have there's going to be a real structural change for some businesses, which is going to make it harder for them to do that. What am I saying? I think it's market dependent.
Yeah, no, it is. I have a bit of an eye on different markets, given our client base and our reach. Life sciences seems to be still kicking on to a point. Healthcare is obviously doing all right. You've got the right contracts and that. And then technology is still going. San Francisco needs to kind of get back to work a little bit. But I'm hearing things are happening. It seems like companies are getting used to a bit of onboarding and stuff, doing that remotely and figuring that out. The recruitment world, we're finding, is just not built for it. Wasn't prepared to let people work remotely, and it's it's been a shocking month so far. So many redundancies, so many people furloughed, and we can only hope that that they all figured it out and how to best move forward. Do you think, given that this has happened, do you think more companies will be a bit more cautious about their cost base and maybe reduce the size of their major offices and have more of a split between remote recruiters and office-based recruiters after this? Or do you think it'll just be back to the way it was? Let's leverage it up and hopefully we can get up and sell before another crash.
It's a really broad question, and I've got to say it's quite a hard one to answer. I think more companies will be more cash sensitive. Again, I spoke to my FD about this recently. So there was a big thing going on LinkedIn where basically there was lots of individuals jumping on the bandwagon and saying, well, basically, if a business owner doesn't have 6 months worth of cash sitting there ready and waiting for a black swan event like this, they're negligent and they shouldn't be in business anyway. Of course it is. It's an absurd position to take. So, because I asked my FD, I said, well, how many times when we scaled our business, because we went for scale, we went fast, and we were always sprinting. So as the money came in, it was going out again, and we were super, super profitable as a business, but we burnt through cash because we were contract orientated. So I think you've got to understand this is a black swan event, and sometimes things like this happen. And realistically, if you'd spent your business career always having 6 months worth of cash in the business, you're not really going to be able to grow that company. So I think you've got to try and take a balanced view of that.
You're going to be a boutique that is founder led, that does that and probably never exits.
And these are the people that were effectively critiquing the rest of the market from that position of that's exactly the profile of the people that I was seeing out there sort of making that noise. It's not realistic typically, especially in recruitment, especially in contract recruitment, where, and look, when you're hiring people, there's a long time scale to get someone from, for instance, if you bring in trainees, even experienced recruiters, there's a real time scale to get that person billing and cash generative, isn't there? So I can't even remember the question. What was the question? I'm rambling.
No, but you've brought in an interesting point, but I'll jump back into it. But it was
Sure.
Do you think that there'll be a split between offices and and the remote side?
I think more remote working is the future, and I think more and more businesses have to go that way because it's the future, right? Central London office, central San Francisco, I can imagine is the same. It's an exorbitant cost. So there's a huge cost burden there, which doesn't necessarily have to be there. Look, the other side of that is if you are looking to grow a scalable business to a size where you want to exit, I'm a bit old fashioned, and I see the value in having that tribe of having, I referenced this on a podcast recently and I said, look, there is nothing for me that does it more for me as an individual than walking onto the sales floor of 100-person strong recruitment floor when everyone is good at what they do and everyone is on top of their game. That buzz you get, that camaraderie, that environment you can create by having human beings in close proximity together. Having that close proximity together is important for certain types of business, and I think for sales businesses, I think it is important. So I think like most things, it depends is the answer. And I think there's usually a happy balance between those two things, or you've got to try and find an appropriate balance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think maybe the facilitation and the coordination, and to a larger extent the talent acquisition side of the business, I think that could be all done remote. I think it is good if you could get a bunch of killers in the one room together, bouncing off each other. But I also think that people will look at this and go, we don't need to have 100 people on there. Like who are the like the people that we. I also wonder about the 360 side. Is it better just to put a bunch of salespeople in a room and then let the candidate generation all go remote, and is that the best way to protect yourself and get out of it? But hey, these are all up in the air.
I like both models, and I think again, like everything, it depends a little bit upon the market, the business, the structure that you're going to build. But I quite like separating them out. 360 is hard because it's hard to find people who are good at both aspects, and it's not just about being good at both aspects, it's genuinely enjoying both aspects. If you don't enjoy it, there's a high burnout in recruitment, and if you're forced to do something on an ongoing regular basis which you don't particularly enjoy, even if you can do it, there's probably going to be a point where you reach where you just think, I don't want to do it anymore. And if you can play to people's strengths, if you can focus in on someone's strengths, I think 100% as a way to build a business, you need to retain great people. And first and foremost, that's around playing to people's strengths. So I think the split is a logical thing to do in a lot of scenarios. But look, I've worked in environments when we started off our business, it was pure 360. And we had some exceptional recruiters who worked that model, but they're hard to find. From my experience, comparatively, it's harder to find someone who's got that balance about them, who actually genuinely enjoys both sides of the role.
Yeah. All right. So how does somebody get a conversation with a big shot like you? What do they have to do?
Just big shot is wow. I don't think I've ever been called a big shot before, but I'll take it. Because you've got such an amazing tan, and I'm sat here looking pasty. I'll take big shot, but I just like talking to people.
I have the shirt on my back at the end of this month.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look, send me a LinkedIn message. I'm always really, really happy to chat shop with anyone. And I think John's exactly the same, my business partner. We were really fortunate throughout our business lives that we'd ask people and for a bit of advice and feedback in situations. And 9 times out of 10, those people were kind enough to give us a bit of time and offer us some genuine feedback, which gave us real value, and it gave us a different perspective of looking at things from people maybe who were a bit more experienced, who were a bit further along and had achieved already things we were trying to achieve. So we are always very aware of that and always really keen to sort of like give back a little bit as well. So anyone who wants to have a chat, just send me a message, if you know, and we'll arrange a call.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks for coming on. Always great to catch up with you, and we'll do another one when we're out the other side of this.
Definitely.
Right.
And you've lost your tan.
Take care.
All right. Cheers, Dualta.